Going inside the issues of our community, this is Local 12 Newsmakers.
For 17 years, Episcopal Bishop Herbert Thompson has served not just his church, but the entire greater Cincinnati community. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. The service and leadership provided by Greater Cincinnati since his arrival in 1988 has been recently recognized by naming Bishop Thompson a great living Cincinnatian. I am pleased to be joined this Christmas morning by Bishop Thompson. He was born in New York City, ordained in 1965, and came to Cincinnati in 1988 as Bishop Coadjutor before being elevated as the 8th Bishop of the Diocese of Southern Ohio in January 1992. Welcome to Newsmakers, and Merry Christmas.
And thank you, and Merry Christmas to you.
In reality, I always have to try to reveal that we are taping early. This isn't really Christmas morning, but it's being seen on Christmas morning. And for you, what does Christmas mean at this point in time and this point in your life?
Well, this is a very special Christmas for me as my last Christmas here in the diocese as Bishop of the Diocese. And I will be with the cathedral family and celebrate the Christmas Eve midnight Mass with them for the last time as their bishop. And that will be rather special and very, very sweet. And I'm looking forward to it. But for me, theologically, Christmas is the time that God so loved the world that he came into our midst as this little child Jesus for the sake of all humankind. And one of the names that is given to this child, apart from Savior and Redeemer, is Emmanuel, God with us. And that means that God is with us. It's meant more to me than I can ever say over these now 72 years of my life. In every circumstance, God always with me and in my midst. And then I would say, too, that Christmas has to be always seen not just as a single day, it's a season, 12 days, and with other seasons, and particularly the season of Easter. If it were not for Easter, Christmas would just be a holiday of the birth of an extraordinary, wonderful man. But in this Christmas, birth of Jesus, there's a cross lurking in the background. Eventually he dies, and then, of course, he's raised to life again, which is to say that the light that came into the world, that God brought into the world, cannot be extinguished, no matter what the circumstances and no matter what the humankind might do in response to the gift of God, that God's intent is to always be with us and to save us in spite of ourselves in this marvelous love that is almost too great for us to understand.
Throughout your life as a minister, as a priest, as a bishop, you've always been very conscious of ecumenical work, of reaching out. And in 1998, you even installed a mezuzah inside the cathedral down on 4th Street, which is a Jewish tradition.
Oh, yes.
And so you've reached out across all sorts of lines, and before you came to Cincinnati as well. In a pluralistic society like ours, what does celebrating Christmas mean? Not in a legal sense, not separation of church and state and all that kind of stuff, but what's it mean in American society in a sort of social sense as opposed to a personal or theological sense?
Well, I think one of the extraordinary and I think wonderful things about Christmas is that Christmas, certainly it is a Christian holy day and holy season, but it's been embraced around the world by people of all faiths and of no faith, peace on earth, goodwill to all humankind, being politically correct here. Everyone understands that, and people gravitate toward it and embrace it. And then the spirit of generosity that Christmas unleashes, and of course a great commercial venture that it has also spawned, is a part of Christmas as well. And I don't resent that one bit. I think it's wonderful. And I find that as I move around the city and around various parts of the world, Christmas does generate a different, wonderful spirit where people are kind and gracious and generous to each other, wishing each other a happy holiday, a Merry Christmas, and it is a wonderful thing, and I think a great gift to us all. I remember when I was in New York, I was in a store, and walking down one day, I was trying to get a last-minute present, and I heard a voice singing, "In the meadow we can build a snowman and pretend that he is Parson Brown." And I started singing myself. And we don't know, man. And in town, and then came down to the end of the aisle. There was another man singing. He saw me. I'd never seen him before in my life. We fell into each other's arms, hugging each other and laughing and wishing each other a Merry Christmas. And it was a most poignant moment where we were brought together through a Christmas song, a secular one, by the Christmas spirit that pervades the city and the earth in this time, wonderful season of the year.
You know, one of the things that those of us who grew up in Cincinnati have known Christ Church. It's been there since 1836. It's been a staple. It's been at the center of so much of Cincinnati's life. But you were the person in 1992 that transformed Christ Church into Christ Church Cathedral.
Yes.
Why? What's the importance of a cathedral in modern day life, in America in the 21st century? Where does a cathedral fit in?
I think one, for the diocese and for me as bishop, what I said to the diocese is that the diocese needs a spiritual center. We have a wonderful office with a great staff, and they're very competent, wonderful administrative work. That is the center of the diocese, or had been pretty much, 412 Sycamore Street. But I said we need an altar at the center of our life from which everything in the diocese would flow. We'd be located in a church, in a cathedral. And of course the cathedral is where the bishop's seat is. And that's where the word cathedral comes from, cathedra, where the bishop sits and teaches and speaks and so forth and so on. And so I asked the diocese and asked Christ Church if they would consider becoming a cathedral for our diocese. It was not new. We had a cathedral before, up into the 1940s, St. Paul's. And then the building was condemned, and they went for years without having one. And now, in 1988, having come from a diocese where a cathedral was central, I asked if they would do that. And they said yes, after lots of discussion. And now it's a wonderful place, and we can't imagine life without it. Every priest is ordained there. Every deacon is ordained there. As bishop, I'm there every Easter, every Christmas. It brings us together as a diocese and anchors our life in the liturgy, in the altar, in that wonderful holy place. And then for the city, it's transformed Christ Church, and it's led it into the city in a more significant way. When we were having those troubles back in 2003, Christ Church Cathedral was at the heart of reconciliation and healing. The clergy walking the streets, helping to bring the city to wholeness and bring it together again. Programs, of course, that reach out all across the city from the cathedral. And a cathedral really is not just a parish church, but it is a house of prayer for all people. And we try to live into that with great intention. And hence the mezuzah on the door, which I think is a wonderful thing. And I, as someone who grew up in New York with a marvelous community of people from all over the world, many of whom were Jewish, to have a mezuzah at our cathedral means a lot to me. And further, Rabbi Gottschalk, who had been the head of the Hebrew Union, he and I were classmates in high school, back at Boys High School in Brooklyn, New York.
Really?
Oh, and I came here and discovered here as my classmate. He's the president of HUC, and I'm the bishop of the Diocese of Southern Ohio. And to have that connection and have it manifest in that wonderful sign means the world to me.
You know, you mentioned in discussing the role of the cathedral there, the importance of the cathedral, and I think you were also, in one sense, talking about yourself, the importance of reaching out to the city,
Yes.
to the community, which you have done on all sorts of issues. It's not just about religion in a narrow sense. You've particularly been active in the area of racial relations, intergroup relations.
Yes.
Where, at this point, where do you feel this city is? How do you think we're moving forward? Are you hopeful? Are you discouraged? Where are you in 2000, at the end of 2005?
Well, I want to begin by saying that I'm retiring in the end of the year.
Yes.
I was going to say 12 days, but it's only now December 25th, so that's 6 days from now. But I have chosen to stay in Cincinnati, and not a very hard choice. I love this city. I am from New York. I grew up there and formed there, but I've come to love this place. It is a wonderful city with great possibility. And when my wife died in 2002, and I asked her where she wanted to be buried because we knew she was dying, she said, "I want to be buried right here in Cincinnati." She said, this is my home. And I feel the exact same way. I can't imagine living anyplace else. This is a place with everything that New York has, and not on the scale that it does. Great symphony, great opera and ballet and all the rest. Wonderful culture, but wonderful people, and people who are committed to the city in a way that I have never experienced before. There's an extraordinary sense of a commitment to the civic fabric of this city that moves me very deeply, and I want to be a part of.
You know, final question here, because we're running out of time. You have just been named in the past few days. I mean, this happened after. This was such a nice addition to your being here this morning. A great living Cincinnatian. At this point in your life, what's that mean to you, given what you just said?
I'm bowled over by it, very frankly, and I never expected it. And when I got the call, I almost fell off my chair. To think that I've been here for 18 years and that my life, my ministry has meant that much to the people who make those kinds of decisions, to choose those persons, really was a great honor. And when I consider who's gone before me and those who are part of the current company, these four, I am honored beyond belief. And I'll try to live up to that, because I think it also carries responsibility.
Even in retirement?
Even in retirement. I did say, however, that being a great living Cincinnatian is wonderful. Better than being a great dead Cincinnatian, certainly. But I wish my parents were here. I wish that my mother and father, who've died several years ago, could be here to see today. They came up through a segregated United States of America. My father was a Pullman porter. My mother was a domestic. They did all that hard preparation stuff that made it possible for me to be the first one in my family to go to college and become a bishop and all the rest. And to think that coming from that kind of a background, that their son is a great living Cincinnatian, I think they would be just honored beyond belief.
Well, we're honored. I'm honored to have you here this morning. We're honored as a city to have had you ministering to us for the last 18 years. Good luck in your retirement, and it's good to hear that you're staying here and you're going to remain active.
Well, thank you.
And Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you. Thank you.
Stay tuned. After almost a decade of quiet work, the plans for the proposed new SCPA in Over the Rhine are taking shape. Thank you. The dream of building a new school for the creative and performing arts has been in the air since 1996. Last month, the architectural team working on the plans unveiled a dramatic preliminary schematic design for the proposed new building, which will be built along Central Parkway at Elm Street, near Music Hall. Welcome back. In 1996, a group of private citizens led by Cincinnati Pop's conductor Eric Kunzel proposed partnering with the Cincinnati Public Schools to design and construct a new school for the creative and performing arts. A new building promises greater flexibility, more modern technology than is possible in the current 1912 structure. In addition, by moving the school across over the Rhine near Music Hall, it plans to bring students into more regular contact with professional performers from the symphony, the May Festival, and the corps of the Cincinnati Ballet. The architectural team working on the design is a partnership of Cole Russell plus Fanning Howie plus Moody Nolan. I am joined now by Tom Klinedist, the chairman of the board of the Greater Cincinnati Arts and Education Center, and Jeff Dodge, an architect with Cole Russell and a member of the team working on SCPA. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Good morning, Dan.
Thank you.
This is pretty exciting because, as I mentioned, we've been talking about this for a long time, and now we're beginning to really see concrete proposals take shape. Tom, where does this project really stand at this point?
The project is undergoing some tweaking of schematic designs, and from there it goes into a budgeting process in order to make sure that the design and construction is within budget. The hard and soft construction costs are estimated at $62 million. Our organization, the private sector, has committed to raising $31 million. We are currently at $22,300,000 and have to be at the $31 million goal certified by the time that the project is ready for bid.
So just to remind everybody now, this is a private-public partnership, the public element being the Cincinnati Public Schools. And in the bond issue that we all voted for a few years ago, that's where their $31 million comes from. And then you're raising another $31 million to make this really the type of school that we're going to see here this morning, right?
That's correct. You also need to understand that Cincinnati Public Schools by themselves paid for all the land acquisition. So they have a little more in the game than just the $31 million. I also need to point out that this is the only private sector public school system collaborative anywhere near approaching this size in the United States. It's a very unique partnership.
Very ambitious project, as we can see. Let's now take a look at, Jeff, the design itself, and I want to roll a little bit of tape on the exterior of the building. So you've created this wonderful fly-through, which people have now seen a couple of clips from. Here we have the exterior of the building that people are seeing. What were you trying to accomplish with the exterior?
Essentially, we're trying to recreate or celebrate the approach that one makes to Music Hall. Traveling west on Central Parkway, turning north on Elm Street and moving towards Music Hall, we describe that motion in what we call an urban curve, which is the curved portion of the design which acts as kind of a unifying element for the various pieces and parts of the entire structure. So that urban curve basically allows spaces and volumes to play in front of or behind on the north or the south side of that curve. The principal element on the south side being the new 750-seat theater. That piece of the school is really the heart of the program, and it needs to be celebrated, and it forms an anchor to that corner between Central Parkway and Elm Street.
And we have a model here that you brought with us. You not only did all of that wonderful animation, you have this model. Is this what we're talking about right
That's
here?
correct.
Is that what you're talking
That's
about?
correct.
Right on this corner.
That's
so
right.
This is Central Parkway, and this is Elm Street. So Music Hall would be just to the north up here, and also for those of us who go to the downtown Y, we're going
That's
to be
correct.
right across from this. Is
That's
that correct?
That's right.
Okay, and Washington Park is going to be right up here. So
That's right.
it's going to make a whole new anchor to that northern edge of town.
That's correct.
People will say, I am sure, gee, that doesn't look like the rest of Over the Rhine. How does it relate to Over the Rhine, to the architecture in Over the Rhine?
Very good question. This design has to do really two things. It has to have a conventional aspect to it, a traditional aspect that blends it with the Over the Rhine area, and you see that in the forms, the more rectangular forms, which will be clad in brick that has similarities in color and texture to the buildings in the existing area. But it also has to embody the fact that this is a forward-looking school program. So the urban curve and the elements of the design that are clad in metal panels tell us also that this building houses not only a facility that is part of the Over the Rhine area, but also a program that is designed to take students into the future.
In fact, that's one of the things, buildings from the exterior can look great, they can be statements, but whether a building works or not really comes down to how it functions on the inside for the people who have to live in that building day in and day out. And again, we have a fly-through of the interior. What's the sense of the interior that you were trying to create? Or you are trying to create?
Essentially, there are two main entries to this building. One on the north from the Washington Park side and the Music Hall side, and one on the south from the Central Parkway side. Connecting those two main elements is what we're calling the Avenue of the Arts, which is an oversized corridor off of which are the major art spaces for the school. And those spaces embody programs that will teach children all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade. That central artery is really the main organizing element within the school, so that when you enter the school, you know where you are at all times and easily to conceive the building.
Which is really important, because lots of buildings you get in the middle of them and you don't know how one part relates to the other, and you're constantly asking for directions. And Tom, one of the things that, and the way I set this up, and maybe it was, I made a mistake here, I'm realizing, that I talked about a replacement for the school that we know as SCPA. But this is also an expansion of that program, because we're going to now include students beginning in kindergarten, which are at Shale School, is that right?
Yeah, the Shield School for Arts Appreciation is going to be combined with the School for Creative and Performing Arts. This is going to create the first and only K through 12 public arts education center in the United States. Again, something very positive and very unique to Cincinnati. This project is intended to bring a lot of positive national attention on the City of Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Board of Education, the State of Ohio Facilities Commission, and all those who are part of this project.
How many students what's the right size of the student body for the building that's being built?
It's currently being built for 1,350 students.
Okay, that's K through 12,
K through
1350. And right now, over at the current SCPA, which starts at 4th grade, am I correct?
That's
4 through 12. How many students are in that building?
They have roughly just under 1,000.
Just under 1,000. So we're not looking at expanding the number of students, relatively speaking. If you took the two feeder schools, you're not growing this school in terms of numbers. You're just providing those students with better facilities. Is that right?
That's correct at the present time.
What sort of, Jeff, what sort of input have the public, the people who are raising the money, teachers, students, been able to have? And we have less than a minute here.
Okay. We've been meeting for the last 4 years with all the groups you just named in the form of a school planning team and a core team. Those meetings are held once or twice a month for, as I said, about 4 years. A dramatic amount of input from teachers, staff, multiple meetings with the administration at CPS, as well as the administration for both those schools. So quite a bit of input.
So this isn't just a design off the ideals and out of the head of an architect,
Absolutely
but
not.
it's really something that the community has had a tremendous amount of input in.
Huge input.
Less than 30 seconds. Are you hopeful that you're going to be able to raise this money?
I know we're going to be able to raise the money.
Okay, and when will this school open?
We're hoping it will open in the 2008-2009 school year.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here, and good luck, and obviously as you develop this, you'll be back.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning, especially this morning on Christmas. Next week, the first day of the new year, I will be joined by Cincinnati Mayor Mark Mallory for the entire program. Have a good week.